the law of attraction never works as specifically as we expect. Maybe we attract things from our thoughts, but not with our actions. You need the law of three: the positive, the negative, and the neutral. The law of three is the one that will guide where the energy is going to move through. What I receive, what I give, and what I intend. What I think, what I feel, and what I do. That's the trinity of coherence. When you put all that together, you start to shape a reality. Even if we have been disconnected, we are magnetical beings. We are basically all channelers all the time because we are positive and negative. Our bodies are electrical. That means that we are all the time channeling information. Today, we created a great mistake, which is that for all the world, we use the same calendar designed by a guy in Europe that just wanted to pay taxes.
Like, just to see how confused we are. December is the 12th month in our calendar, but it's literally telling us December, 10th month, October, 8th month. The names of the months are actually clues that we're doing this completely backwards. All right, everybody. So many of you know who this man is. He has been given the blessing, or potentially sometimes the curse, depending on what the situation that arises.
Depends.
That he remembers his past lives. And not only that, he has the ability to open his energy body to receive information and guidance from what he would call the network, and also from specific beings. And I've watched this man do unbelievably remarkable things. I've watched him at the Temple of Athena down in Delphi. I watched him take a pretty calm day with some scattered wispy clouds. And then he started activating at the temple. And then he started calling in deeper, darker clouds. And then he went like this, and then the clouds started dumping water on us. And then he started calling to the wind and then pulling the wind in these swirling 50-mile-an-hour gusts as he's singing and Vailana's singing. And it was one of the craziest scenes that I've ever seen. We actually have some of it on camera. So maybe we'll show a little bit of that when we make this into a video, because it's absolutely mind-boggling. And of course, we had one of our brothers there, Aaron Alexander, who witnessed the whole thing, which was absolutely remarkable. And he's sitting on the bus and he goes, "What do you think the odds are that was a coincidence?" We're like, "The fuck are you talking about, man?" He's like, "I know, but it's good to have a little bit of that skeptical mind." So I also want to invite anybody who's skeptical of this whole thing to also hold that too. It's important. It's important that we also hold this idea that, yeah, I see this, I believe this, but just holding that little bit of maybe, I think is healthy and it's important. And as we get to the last section of this discussion on channeling, it's very important to hold that little bit of skepticism, that little bit of maybe, because we're entering magical realms. And these magical realms are largely uncharted territory for most of us, unless you're Matthias, in which he's been charting that territory for lifetime after lifetime and remembering it. But the way we're going to start today is Matthias is going to give us an idea of the sacred calendar, which is not the Julian calendar, which just carved up the year arbitrarily into months that they named after emperors and, you know, people that they thought were cool, but the sacred calendar that moves in alignment with the whole cosmos, and how the activities of ritual, manifestation, meditation, activation, and even channeling are potentiated by adhering and at least paying attention to the sacred calendar, the lunar cycles, the solar cycles, the movements of the stars. So we're going to start with a basic understanding of the sacred calendar from Matthias's perspective.
I'll try. Well, yeah, when we talk about calendar, is something that we take for granted most of the times, because we don't relate it with our specific reality and how we can manifest reality. But actually, time is the one that allows us to see matter. So the way in which we organize time is the way in which we can, of course, manifest matter. So in these days, that calendar just became a way to count days, or to just say, okay, another day passed. We don't actually take the power of what it means. And actually, the word calendar, which is calendas, is a period of time to pay taxes in the Roman Empire. I don't know if you know that, but actually every time that we say calendar, we are saying, I have to pay taxes. So, yeah, Roman Empire, really? So, he did it great. So because of that, we just organized the dates according to the moon, just to know when this guy would come and knock the door and say, give me the 10%. So everyone kind of knew that when the moon was about to get full, something was about to be taken from you. So basically we organized the calendas in that way. And were basically the Romans that shaped the idea of our calendar in order to have an organization for an empire, which was paying taxes, organizing rituals, ceremonies, and stuff. But the reason why we started actually to make something that we actually call cycles, in Atlantean language we call it the cycles of earth, the cycles of fire, the cycles of water. So when we started to organize cycles to understand what was the energy around in order to manifest something, to actually do something physical, not just to calculate moments. So our relationship with the cycles started actually when we started walking in the horizon, like around 3 million years ago, when humans left the forest in Africa and they started to walk around trying to find food after a great moment of hunger. So in that moment, a lot of humans started to get lost and had no idea where to go, where to walk to, maybe deserts. So there was only one way to actually know where you are, which was following the sun or the moon or specific stars. So they saw that some stars were fixed in the sky. So they said, every time, if we follow those stars, maybe we won't get lost, even if we don't know where we are. So according to that, they understood the cycles of what time of the year these stars are positioned according to which mountain, which river, which tree. So they started to talk about the cycles of when that star moves to the top of the mountain or to the valley. So that created a cycle, a period of time in which we know where to move, where to head to, when to do something specific. And the cycles of the moon, they also show them that if you follow the moon, you can actually have a very organized time. Like you can actually organize your life. Like everything that happened on this planet was because of the moon. So they started to understand the tides of the ocean, when the water was melting in the mountains, to have it for sowing and so on. So they were following the sun, but the moon was the one telling how life would be. The moon was telling, oh, it's a full moon, so it's a cycle of reproduction, so we can have sex now. And so everyone got crazy because men were fighting for the most fertile, feminine woman that was there. So it created for millions of years this idea that in full moon we get crazy. It was because of reproduction. And so we started to understand that if we follow the moon, we know exactly how life should be on Earth. If we follow the sun, we know exactly how to be guided in our purpose. Where are we heading to is the sun. How we head to is the moon. And the position of the stars would tell us what to do in every place or every moment. So we started to write the cycles, but there's a problem that there's no beginning, no end in these cycles. So it doesn't matter in which continent you live or in which hemisphere, and even though in which latitude. So the position of the stars is completely different. The light of the sun is completely different. The moon, different position. So that meant that for every region, there was a different calendar. And today we created a great mistake, which is that for all the world, we use the same calendar designed by a guy in Europe that just wanted to pay taxes. And that made that the entire world lost the connection with their own potential of creation. Because the way in which in the equinox the light hits the earth in the North Pole or the South Pole is completely different. So you cannot do exactly the same. You cannot celebrate the same things or manifest the same things because the light is not suitable for that. So for every latitude and every parallel, we should have a different calendar. And for every region of the planet, we should have a different calendar. And for every side of the planet, we have a different new year. So why do we have new years? It's basically because we are trying to understand when the cycles ends and when they begin. Actually, the beginning of every new year is in either a solstice or an equinox. So we have 4 main new years in the year, which are related to the position of our planet. And the position of our planet is actually showing the position of our mind. Because even if we have been disconnected, we are magnetical beings. And because we are magnetical, our structure of cells tend to balance to the north magnetical pole. Our blood is red because it has iron in it. So iron, like a compass, follows and organizes itself according to the magnetical North Pole. So wherever the magnetical North Pole is pointing at, our blood, our head, our heart, we align to that. And because today we have no idea where is the north, and we don't care. So everyone is doing whatever. We are all lost and disconnected from the purpose of our life because we are not aligned with the North Pole, and we don't know where are the precession of the equinoxes, which is our star right now. So because of that, we lost the power of creation. We lost the power of our own being, of our culture, our races, our territories. We've been disconnected from that. So these 4 main new years, around those new years, all the cultures were trying to organize themselves. And for example, we started to organize the year beginning in March, in the equinox of March, but mainly because the people in Middle East did it that way. For sure, for South America, it's June. It's the solstice of June. March, we don't care. But for the people in Middle East was very important because it was the moment to start sowing, to start putting the seeds on the ground. So we needed to bless the land, the soil, with fertilizer. And the fertilizer in that moment was blood. The blood of who? Of the goat. So they put goat blood everywhere, and they said, those stars there are telling us that we have to put blood on the soil for the seeds to grow better. And we call that the goat, which is Aries. So the stars are not modifying what we are. We are actually modified by our perception of where the stars are located. So astrology is not a star pulling our soul. Astrology is how our soul perceives the stars. And we organized the beginning with Aries just because in the Middle East it was like that. And then we started to celebrate equinox, then solstice, and then equinox, and then solstice. And when the last cycle of solstice, the last solstice, before the beginning of the new cycle started, so we, in Europe, they had this celebration that was the return of the sun. So the return of the sun was in the solstice of December. In this December, which is the 10th month, Deka, so it's December is the 10th, is the 10th month. So in that moment, what we did was, after those days, we celebrate for 12 days. We have to celebrate that the sun has returned. So during 3 days, since the 22nd, we have 3 days where the sun is going to rise up exactly in the same moment, in the same place. And then on the 25th of December, it starts to go back. So it marks that we begin the longer days again. And so that's why we all celebrated the returning of the sun, or the birth of Christ.
When you're saying we, who are you referring to in the we?
Oh, of all the humans that were looking at the sun. And not their balls.
And just to get the subtlety of what he said, December, like just to see how confused we are. December is the 12th month in our calendar, but it's literally telling us December, 10th month, October, 8th month. It's the 10th
November,
month.
Nove, which
It's
is
like
9th.
Everything is off. Like even the way that we've named the things are actually confusing us the whole time. And there's clues all over the place. The names of the months are actually clues that we're doing this completely backwards.
Oh, yeah.
And even the word, I don't know if you guys realize this, the word lunatic. Where does the word lunatic come from? Luna, moon.
Moon.
Right? Like we know these things. These clues are encoded in our language, but still we just ignore it. And this is a part of empire to get us off of the sacred calendar, to take us out of our power and our potentiation, to create the right rituals, to harness our own power, to have the ability to manifest. All of these things are actually working against us in this empirical calendar because they don't care about that. They just want us to pay taxes. Honestly, it's like follow
Julius
the money.
Caesar and Augustus Caesar.
Right.
Creating July and August. Which they said, I want my month.
Yeah.
And I don't want for it to be 30 days. I want to be 31 because I want to be bigger than the other one. So they just
that's
put
why we're
another
having
day.
this summit in October. Oh, you guys didn't know that? Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's October.
Yeah. So we try to organize everything related to every aster or with every star, and this for example, that's why we all celebrate the new year now, not in an equinox or a solstice. We celebrate it after the Roman party. 12 days of party after the sun return is January 1st. So it was just a party that took a long way of Baco, who was drinking, fucking, dancing, that's it. So when they said, maybe we have to start working again, that's the first year of that's the first day of the year. And they call it January because it was the god Janus, which is the god of time. Had two faces, one looking backwards, the other one looking forward. So he said, the god of Janus, January, is the god that tells, okay, now we can start again. And we created a new year. But now in the whole world, mainly, we are celebrating the New Year in a moment of the end of an orgy. So it's like, what are we doing? It's not related to anything in the skies or anything. So we celebrate something because just a Roman said that. So that's why when we lost this connection, we also started to mix cultures and traditions. And today, for example, we have this moon day, which is Monday, Tuesday, which is actually the day of Mars, which is but it's a name from the Norse tradition. Wednesday is also a name from the Norse tradition. Tuesday is Thursday, the day of Thor.
Yeah, Wednesday is Woden's day, Odin's day.
Woden's day, Woden, yeah, Wodan, which is the father. So Friday is the day of Freya. So it's Norse. So suddenly we mixed the Viking tradition and we created the days for each one of the gods. And we today celebrate the days, and the Romans said Saturn as Saturday. So we celebrate the Saturn, and in Sunday we celebrate the sun. So we have all the pagan of Europe all together mixed and not knowing why. And each one of those days were specifically named like that because there was a purpose of celebration in a ritual to awaken a potential of each one of those gods or stars. And the way we organized it today, it was because of the Middle East, again, creating the days according to the celebration of God. So we have in every, or for example, hour comes from the word Horus. And Horus is Horus, the god of the sun in Egypt. So Horus is the one that marks where the sun is. Horus is there, Horus is there, Horus is there, Horus is there. So it's 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. So it's the same thing. So all the time is organized in a concept that is divine to tell us what to do at which moment, because the energy is suitable for you to do specifically something at that time. And that's why the ancient ones lived through rituals all the time. They did circles, trinities, they created patterns and put intentions in every day to download that information into us. Because now, one thing is the mind, which is the perception of today is the day of the moon, so we have to celebrate something related to the moon. But in the other hand is the moon physically moves our blood, moves the cycles of life in the feminine body mainly. It controls the gravity of our planet. It pulls all the water of the oceans towards one direction or the other. So this is such a powerful force that when the moon is there, it moves us completely. So if you don't set your mind, your heart, and your intention and your action according to what is happening with the moon in that moment, so you are losing the potential that power has on you. So instead of using the power, you are used by the power. So it's like, I won't move, but the moon comes and gives you a slap, and you have to move anyway, but you will be like a slave of their gravity instead of using the gravity. So we lost the power when they said that God was invisible, so you cannot see it, so you cannot use it. And don't follow the sun, don't follow the moon, don't follow the stars, because that's pagan. So that created a disconnection from the reality that took the power that we have in order to manifest or create or do anything. And that loss of connectivity with something very simple, which is knowing which hour it is, where the sun sets, where it rises, that gives us the power of God. That gives us the power of creation. And to pay attention to these calendars and knowing how to use it, you will realize, as I said before, there is no specific way or unique way to use a calendar. We have to find our own. We have to find our own way to use it according to in which latitude and longitude we are in the planet. And according to that, you can kind of be in a tribe of creation. That's why cultures were created, because of basically that, because of basically saying, okay, we got together and we will all celebrate specifically one day that put us all together, because it's more powerful to use the gravity of the movement of the stars and the planet if we are all together, because only one person cannot have that power. You need a group of people to create more magnetism, so it creates more power. So that's why the tribes, the cultures were created around that idea. And we call these gatherings ceremonies. I don't know if you know, but ceremonies comes from the word cereal, which means cereal. So every time that we do a ceremony is basically because we want to share cereals, because we were harvesting or sowing. So what we did when we got together was sharing food. So we were doing a ceremony, which is to put all the seeds together as one. Ceremony. Cereal monos. So it's one cereal for all of us. Mainly is that. So a ceremony basically would be sharing food. And dance because we are sharing. And pray because we want more cereals. So,
what was your favorite cereal growing up, Matthias?
In this life?
Yeah. Well, nobody's going to know your cereals from
That's a weird
9,000
question,
years
really?
ago. Yeah. What was your favorite cereal?
I don't know. In Argentina, we don't have that many.
You know, what, like,
Here in the supermarket, it's like,
Raisin
what the fuck are you doing?
But you didn't have like a Raisin Bran or like a Fruit Loops or like a...
Yeah, but I think I didn't.
You didn't like any cereals?
No, just bread.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Honey Bunches of Oats. Those were pretty good. Our whole cereal story, this is a completely unimportant thing. Our whole cereal story is also completely wild and fucked up when you actually study like Kellogg and what he was actually trying to do. And he was trying to create foods that would actually drop people out of their eros, right? So because he had this war against sexuality and was doing all kinds of weird fucking things like giving young men enemas and trying to create cereals that would make them impotent in the thing. Like the whole history of our cereal is fucked up. And then, of course, all of the corn syrup and everything else that's leading to all of this obesity that we see, childhood obesity, all of this thing, like cereals, the way that we've corrupted even that. And, you know, going back to the ancient roots, Ceres, the goddess of the grain, of the harvest. And now we have cereal, which is this completely degraded form that was actually manipulated to be degraded. Cornflakes were designed to actually sap a person's eros. And this whole thing, like, so you trace all of these different things and you see how far off course we've actually gotten from, you know, from the days to the months to the disconnection with all of the power that's available in the cosmos. So now is the time to start to reclaim sacred calendar, to start to pay attention to what has been done so we can undo what has been done to create a new story and new holidays too. I mean, the commodification of Christmas, which then took the place of this, you know, Saturnalia, this Bacchanalia that was this wild orgiastic end of the year, you know, celebration, and how that's been commodified and then manipulated. It's invitation that's right there waiting for us to reclaim ritual, calendar, ceremony, all the way down to our food, all the way down to how we gather, all the way down to, you know, reconnecting us to a remembrance of how powerful we actually are. And that's what I think is the invitation for now, especially when we can look out at the world and feel wildly disempowered. Well, the world has been intentionally making us wildly disempowered. So how do we get back into our power? And that's, the second part of this conversation is, all right, now let's pay attention to the real calendar. Let's pay attention to the real use, and then reclaim holidays, reclaim sacred time, and put it back on our time so that we can have the power back and take the power back from empire. Because if we don't take the power back from empire, empire is going to continue to wield power in the horrific ways that we see every day, in the horrific ways that we don't see, the insidious ways that it's just subtly taking us further and further from our natural innate potency.
Yeah, it's basically in history, whoever controlled the cereals controlled the ceremonies. And that's why when there was an administrator of agriculture and someone that controlled everything, all the seeds that we had, so they said how the ceremony would work. And they started to create monotheisms. They started to say the right way to do a ritual. And this took the power of the people and gave it to just a few people that actually administrated the agriculture, which were the feuds, the kings, the ones that were owners of the power of food. And that's what took the power from everyone.
And now, and think about that now. Think about all right, we understand these fiefdoms and these serfdoms where rulers, put people to work. Think of any Robin Hood story. They're just driving people for more grain and more taxes and all of that. We say, yes, look, we've evolved so much from those days of, serfdom and the days where the rulers controlled people, conscripted them to battle, taxed them, would kill them if they didn't. And then now look at what Monsanto does. Controls all the seeds, modifies them, puts people in debt, forces them to use their particular brand of seeds, and all of the corruption. That's just another enforced serfdom upon so many people in the world, including, farmers in our own country. So these patterns have just changed their name. Instead of a king or a lord, and instead of your vassals or your serfs, it's now corporations like Monsanto, and then it's still call them farmers, but the farmers are beholden to their feudal lord, the Lord Monsanto. And that's not the fucking Lord that we want controlling our food, which gives us our life force energy, our vital life force energy. And even the way that we've then, and again, this is another kind of stretch, but if you look at the Rosicrucian model, there's this idea that comes from Ahriman, and Ahriman is this force that wants to quantify everything. So it wants to just measure everything, and everything is equivalent once it's quantified. So you just measure carbohydrate, fat, protein, you measure all of these different things, you break it all down. And so much of our diet and nutrition is based upon this Ahrimanic materialist reductionist of what you're having. And so some people still say, you'll still see people say, a calorie is just a calorie. No, it's fucking not. It's not. It's not the same. A calorie from an avocado is not the same as a calorie from a cornflake. It's just not. Right? But we've tried to reduce everything, and what we've lost is what is the vital life force energy of the hands that sowed those seeds into the ground, that harvested them, that prayed over the land. What is the vital life force energy of the plants? This is something also that I find fault with even somebody like Paul Saladino. He will look at the anti-nutrients and the nutrients in a piece of kale. Sure, it's not true. But it's also missing the point. How much vital life force are in these green and verdant plants that you can't measure? You can't measure that organic, biodynamic, plants that you put in your body. And we feel it when we have them. We know that's not just, the anti-nutrients are fucking us up. Actually, you have one of those rich salads that somebody's cultivated from their garden. You feel different. And yeah, there's some micronutrients in there, some anti-nutrients in there, sure. There's some carbohydrate in there. There's some fiber in there. Sure, all that's true. And what is the vital life force energy? Same with meat. You can measure the difference between a grass-fed cow and a regular cow and say, yeah, grass-fed cows, it has more CLA. And CLA is healthy for you. So that's the reason why you should have grass-fed cows. Yeah, and also living a life in torture and being an animal that's been taken out of the natural order of their life, fed something that they would never eat, and then you're consuming that vital life force from that animal, it's different. And you can't measure it. You can only experience it. So this revolution of how we take our power back extends into every different category. And you'll see Empire still trying to prop up these archaic, manipulative ideas about food. You know, there was a recent food pyramid that said that Fruit Loops were better for you than fucking eggs. Like legitimately. And then there's also been discovered they're paying dietary influencers to start speaking this nonsense. Like the corruption that goes into every single category, from our water and all of the different things that we put in our water supply to all the different things that we try to prop up as good food versus bad food. I mean, the corruption has become universal as Empire has seeped deeper and deeper into culture across the board. So this conversation is a broad conversation. And actually, I'm working on a book with Dr. John Churchill, who you guys got to be with. And it's called From Empire to Kingdom. And a big part of the book, From Empire to Kingdom, is about rewriting and remembering all of these old stories. And some of which, you know, we go out in this tangent about food because it's related. Ceremony is related to food. But it's also beyond food, of course. And, you know, so many of the things that we even do here are part of a remembering process about how we can take our power back and use that power to take energy and convert that energy and emotion into matter. So if you,
Sorry. No.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, it's just that usually we separate the concept of stars and food, like if they are two different things, but actually the plants grow because of the light of the sun, because of the cycle of the moon. So according to the position of the planet or how the light enter the planet, every plant has a different information. Every seed has a potential related to the light that came from the skies. So they wouldn't be able to grow without the light of the stars. And when you have that power in the plant and you eat it, you're not eating a plant, you're eating the sun. You're eating the bright of the sun materialize into something here. So that's why if you are following God in the skies, the best way to becoming God is eating it. You know, so that's why the food is basically that God inside. And something that that I think that there are people doing it again, could be a little bit disgusting, but also very powerful, which is that before they sow the seeds, they nourish the seeds with their own saliva. And the reason why is because the seed incorporates your DNA. And when it absorbs your DNA, the light of the sun, the cycles of the moon, your DNA from within, in a plant, it all combines together to create medicine for yourself. So right now we are basically eating the medicine of Monsanto, which is maybe a guy spitting in all our seeds. I don't think they spit on it.
Well, it's not even something that
would be more human.
It's a human. Well, a human is at least, you know, comes from creation. These are genetically modified seeds. Mm-hmm. These are something that is against what nature could actually produce. You know, so we're actually getting further and further away from sacred life and sacred world the more that we modify what nature has actually created. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't have the right as human beings to create modifications, to come up with cool things that can be helpful and use our creativity to make more possibility, of course. But it all comes with great caution and a price that we potentially have to pay, especially when we start tampering and tinkering with food and the energetics of the food that we have.
And related to this idea of, well, it has protein, it has this calories or these kind of things, like science, the word science means to cut. So cut in pieces something that is together. So from the very origin, science was not science, it was alchemy. So alchemy is the word al-qam, which is an Arab word to describe the unity of things. And so when we didn't do just science, we did alchemy, we understood that when we eat something or mix something, we are pulling together the forces that have been created in the very origin of the universe. And when we do that, we transform them into something new for our integration of that universe. But today, with just science, they cut the pieces of the universe and they tell you, this is right. So this is the perfect thing. Like if you have these calories, if you have this sugar, these things, the combination of that is good. But there is something missing, which is the alchemy, not just the chemistry, just alchemy. The alchemy basically is, what is the purpose of this together? What is the intention of that within me? What does it mean for me outside? So what will mean for me within? So that missing part is the spirituality. But when we cut spirituality and science in different ways, science dedicate their life to cut everything and not giving importance to the ceremony or to the pattern. In the past, for example, when people got together to eat, they later celebrate. And one of the main celebrations was actually a ritual in which women and men were spinning around to each other. Doesn't remind you about the stars, about how they spin, how they turn. So basically, the first dancings that we experienced as a ceremony was us spinning in our own axis, like the planet does, like the moon does, and then spinning around each other, which is like the moon around the sun, around the earth around the sun. So every movement and every step that we gave marked a time. So through food and the celebration, we activated a way in which we became those things. So when we just, in history, when people started to go against spirituality and we just went to science, we just have the pieces, but not the meaning of the whole thing. And that meaning is when we set an intention or a purpose on it. And we can of course explain that what science is explaining is real, but the reality is not just the third dimension. There are many options of that reality that gives the purpose of all of it together, and that's the part of spirituality that creates alchemy from science. And I think that giving the power back to our calendar related to our food gives the power of creation and transformation for us to create our own medicine, not looking for the medicine that others do, but to eat our own medicine. There's a way in which just by the saliva on the seed, you program your medicine for the future, or also drinking your tears. Your own tears have a chemical structure, a composition that is specifically designed to drop into your mouth. So when you cry about something, the structure of the water, like the composition and the pattern of the water, changes according to what you need in that moment to heal it. So licking seeds and drinking tears, it's a way to make alchemy.
So we're going to be doing breath work on Saturday. And That's tomorrow. And there's going to be probably a lot of tears. This is a time breathwork often brings up a lot of tears. And so here's the simple, all right, we've gotten a bit philosophical, but we're going to start getting practical here. So if you can remember, and we'll have people guiding you, and to take this knowledge, this forgotten knowledge that we're remembering, and those tears come, to understand that those tears, and we've actually started to be able to measure the different times and different tears have different things. Science has already made the step to try and figure that out, but they still don't understand the purpose. But now, this is a revelation for me as well. Why don't you just take those tears and, steer them into your mouth, however you can manage that.
But your own. Don't lick the face of the
Don't
others.
lick the face of somebody else. You might get a different medicine that you're not actually looking for. I get high off somebody else's tears. So there's these simple things that, once we remember, and also, there's different studies that have shown about how your attitude towards food changes the way that your body responds towards food. And I wrote about a lot of these in my book, Own the Day, but there's more and more that come out all the time. And some of these have to do with the placebo effect. Like they gave two different groups the same smoothie. They told one group that the smoothie was really healthy, and then watched all of their blood markers and their blood sugar and everything and measured it. And then they told another group, this is the most decadent McFlurry, Dairy Queen type of smoothie. This is bad for you. And then measured their blood, and it was a totally different response. So our attitude towards food makes something completely different. So if you have an attitude like, let's say you're just stuck in a place and the only spot you got is McDonald's, and you're like, fuck it, I need to eat a Big Mac. Well, granted, that has some things in it that are going to be probably working against you. But if you are eating that and every bite you take is like poison, 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 it's going to accelerate and accentuate the poison of that food you eat. And that could be with sugar, that could be with gluten, that could be with anything else. There's another famous study of somebody with split personality disorder. And this person with split personality disorder had 12 distinct personalities. And you can look all this up. 12 distinct personalities. 11 of them were wildly allergic to orange juice. Wildly allergic. They would drink orange juice, break out in hives, right? Almost anaphylactic levels. But one of the personalities loved orange juice. And he could drink the shit out of that orange juice and be totally fine. Like the power of our mind to be able to actually alchemically adjust what's actually happening energetically in our body. This is not woo-woo. This is actually real. This is fully real and been proven by the scientific method, by these different case studies. So we can be sloppy or lazy with our thoughts and our beliefs and our mind, but putting that intention into our water, into our food, and just taking the time to do that will literally change our energetic body, which will literally change our lives. So there's simple things that you can do, and then there's more complex things you can do, like when we were in that temple in Egypt, and you created one of these different constellations where you put Vailana and I in the center, and then you got a group of 3 men and 3 women to rotate around us one way, and then you had electrons moving the other way, and you orchestrated this whole thing, and I had the most powerful activation of my life inside this temple. Well, that's a little bit more complicated, but ultimately rediscovering these technologies then can help us with even more powerful rituals and manifestations. So there's the individual things you can do, like with your tears and with your food and with your beliefs and with your thoughts. And then there's the even more powerful, complicated rituals that Matthias also remembers that can actually create even bigger activations. And I was there to experience that.
Weird stuff. So yeah, basically our body does this all the time. We are all the time creating rituals and structures within our body every time a molecule gets together with another molecule, and they create a compound, chemical reaction that activates a hormone, and the hormone makes us feel happy, maybe. And it was just a combination of things that you might think they don't feel, but they make you feel. So through the division of spirituality and science, we started to think that the only thing that is active in our reality is the physical thing. So you have to analyze that. But the mindset to give power to that organization, we left it behind because it's impossible to prove scientifically. It's only spiritual or feeling. As I was saying, every ritual or ceremony had more power over the food and changed the perception, as Aubrey was saying, on how you can be healthier or more connected related to how you set your intention in it. So in the same way as these particles in our body get together to activate a hormone that we will call love, or we will call happiness, joy, and these kind of things that we usually tend to relate to the soul and not to the body. We, in this planet Earth, if we see how tiny we are actually like molecules of this planet. So you can do the same for the entire world and the entire planet if you create the right combination as the molecules do in your own body. So for that, you have to think that there is always someone that will represent a proton, someone that will represent a neutron, someone that will represent an electron. And if you put the right amount of electrons around a proton, or two protons together and one neutron, and you start to create a molecule, an atom that creates another molecule, and so on. So that is so powerful that can create joy in a lot of people, like a chemical reaction. So it's just because we organize in a way that we sometimes forget. Every time that we get together into ceremonies, into kind of these talks, we are interacting to one another. We talk with certain people and certain others we don't like, you know? So maybe a lot of protons together will create a toxic environment. So I'd rather not be there. So you feel repelled to some people and connected to some other people, and you start basically creating an atom every time that you sit together and start to talk to each other, and you interact to one another about something. You are exchanging energy, which is the same thing that an electron does with a proton. And if you do that with a specific purpose and not just thinking that, it's just I'm here because I like these people, but you organize the pattern in a specific way, you activate a specific hormone in the body of Earth. So as many people are aware on how to connect to each other and creating the specific patterns, you can create a change in what is happening around. And what we did there, for example, we were trying to create the Merkaba, which Merkaba, spiritually talking, it's a vehicle for the spirit, but in here is actually a molecule. So when we create a Merkaba, you need 3 electrons and 3 protons spinning around, which means positive and negative, or if you like, 3 women, 3 men, to be more human, spinning around 1 neutron and 1 proton. So it could be also a woman and a man. So if those are in the center and they feel the movement of these energies around, one's going to the right, the other one's going to the left, you start to create physically a Merkaba. And it's not your own, it's a group Merkaba. And you start to feel the energy moving around. And suddenly, without thinking about it, other electrons start to join, like what happened in the temple. People just had no idea what was happening, but suddenly, without thinking, they start to spin around. It's like you don't have to think or believe in it. You just get drawn to it. And you start to feel that something is happening and you start to live the process of it. And some people might feel sad and others might feel happy. That's what we call the waves of positive and negative. But we humanize the whole thing. And we might say, I don't feel this was good because I felt sad. But actually it's because you were representing the lower vibe of that, which is necessary too. Someone needs to be sad to compensate the happy, to create a link of energy, because the movement of energy is positive and negative. If everyone is happy, no movement. We call it a toxic environment. Too many protons together. But also, that's why when we get together, someone needs to enter in a process, the process of going down, and the others help the process of going up. And that's how the waves are moved. So what we usually did in ceremonies was to locate these kind of things. But then the science of spirituality came and separated, okay, women in one side, men in the other. You are supposed to be negative, you are supposed to be positive. And we separated the whole thing, creating duality and not a circuit of energy. So even spirituality, we started to make science, which is division on the parts. So that also made us lose the power of the feminine side of each man and the masculine side of each woman to calibrate this power that we have on creation. And so that's why, for example, in many of my gatherings, I act like saying, okay, these people will represent this, and together with these other people, we have to spin in one specific direction, the other one's in the other direction. We have to shape this geometry. We have to do this. We have to do that, because it's all like a machine of biological structure in the planet that helps us move powerful energies around. As many gather and do these specific spinnings, lower energy, higher energy, all together, it starts to actually potentiate the energy of the net that is resounding in the same frequency. So in order to start coordinating these energies, you at least need 3 people. It's the law of 3. The law of 3 is the one that will guide where the energy is going to move through, towards or from. So
we're starting to get into now manifestation practices.
Oh, yeah.
So how you take a ritual like this, as we were talking about, the one that we did in the Temple of Dendra was a spiritual activation practice. And so that's one purpose for one of these rituals. And again, also Matthias is saying and people just know what to do. Well, some people don't know what to do. Some people tried to join the circle of the 3 men and 3 women, and Matthias would just point at them and go, out. Out. like no one was going to fuck with the geometry of what he had to do. And people are like, what do you mean? I'm just trying to play along. He's like, no, you out.
You spin around.
Yeah, you spin
remember
around.
you spin around.
Yeah. And then people are like, oh, okay. So ultimately, the geometry is important to hold, and so there has to be that discretion there to actually activate the rituals. So there's rituals that you could do for those type of activations. There's rituals that you could do for healing. But again, that specific one, just to break it down again, man and woman, masculine and feminine, myself and Vailana, 3 men and 3 women spinning. And then there was electrons that were crisscrossing, 1 man, 1 woman crisscrossing around the outside. And then eventually other electrons did form in this kind of crisscrossing pattern. And that's what created that magical ritual. So now we're going to take that. So that's one purpose for a magical ritual, that you could time with different, sacred elements of the sacred calendar, different times that you could create this. And then of course, weaving in food. And so we're giving kind of like an open sourced model to create your own rituals. And of course, learn from the rituals that many of the people who are connected to the land and who'd practiced this, could understand. But now as he's moving into this rule of 3, we're going to talk about manifestation practices and really get into, all right, well, let's say, how do you want to manifest something? And of course, probably all of us have some type of manifestation practice, but oftentimes it's a practice you do by yourself. And that's not nearly as powerful as what Matthias is going to describe with his rule of 3.
So, as we said, what we have been talking before, you can interpret that when people get together in a specific pattern, you create the structure of a machine, of an energetical machine. But for that, you need fuel. The fuel is the negative that we call food. And the purpose is the positive that we call stars. So the light of the stars, sun, moon also, coming down from the positive to the negative, creates the food that makes the fuel for the structure to move. So that's the positive and the negative in our daily life. We have some sun, and then we eat what the sun produced. And in the middle, we do our stuff. So when we organize specifically that stuff related to a specific position of the positive, which is in a specific moment of the year with a certain position of the stars, that gives a specific food for that task that we need to ingest in order to calibrate our machine. And then we position the structure specifically as we are supposed to relate it to that moment. So we start to create something we call manifestation. And in order for that, you need the law of 3, the positive, the negative, and the neutral. The law of 3 basically says that you need always 3 things at least in order to manifest whatever. So it's good to have someone in charge of the negative, someone in charge of the positive, and someone in charge of the neutral.
So you gloomy motherfuckers, you have a sacred purpose. Like, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So when you are, because we have divided everything into good and bad, we tend to believe that negative is bad. But negative means the one that pulls all the energies to the ground to hold them. So it's basically the feminine side of reality, because receives the energy and produce something with it. Let's say a baby, for example. So it receives all the energies and produces something new from that. That's the negative, going within to interpret something that was outside and give it a mean inside. That was the feminine aspect, which is the negative, attracting that. The positive is the one that expands. Something that is within goes outside and expands. So that's more the masculine aspect of the energy. And the neutral energy is the one that can hold both of them, but doesn't move the other two. Like, it's just the middle point that creates a bridge or a balance between those two forces. So the masculine side, the positive, doesn't go far away, and the negative doesn't go very deep. So the neutral is the one that basically interact to one another, so they remember that they need one another. Okay, that's the neutral. So the law of 3 says that when you have 3 people, each one of them representing this structure, you start to create a bridge between what is in another dimension, in the stars, to what is in this reality on Earth. And you, by neutrality, create something new from both of it. And because we have been divided, we either want to go to the light or want to go to the earth. And we kind of start to fight against science, religion, men and women. So this kind of things that are dividing us all the time, when we need a neutral aspect to balance all that, to actually create what we call a toroid, or the magnetical field, which is everything that goes up must go down again. Everything that goes down must go up again. And it creates a constant circuit of electrical and magnetical energies. So when you have these these three aspects, you are creating an electromagnetical field, which means that the energy is not lost in the positive, neither kept in the negative. Both are creating a constant circuit of, I have to go away, yeah, but come back to me. And what is in me, I have to share it. So that constant frequency of this constant movement of the energy creates an exchange that manifests and that brings everything that is subtle in other realities into the physical shape. We call manifestation to this process, not attraction. That's another thing, completely different. Attraction is to pull something towards you. Atraczo. So traccionar is to track something. Okay, so attract is basically you will attract whatever is resounding with you. If you are resounding in this way, you will attract what is in your own frequency. So that's why attraction, the law of attraction, never works as specifically as we expect, because maybe we attract things from our thoughts, but not with our actions. So because we are not coherent in the law of attraction, most of the people cannot actually attract something. Okay, so we have to be coherent first in order to attract something. In the law of manifestation, you don't attract anything. You have to create it yourself. The word manifesto means a party with your hands. Is the Latin word mani, hands, festo, party. So what is manifestation? Is when your both hands get together in your heart to mold something with mud. So the idea of making clay figures, which is how humans were created, they say. So because you put both hands together, two opposite things, left and right, together in order to, from the heart, create something. So it's art, basically. What you are doing is art. The manifestation means to create something from your heart, with your own hands, with your own action. So in order to manifest, you need three aspects. One negative in your left, one positive in your right, and one neutral in your heart. When you have this, you have the right that says, I have to do that, the left that says, I need these materials to do it, and the heart that says, this is my intention. So when you put all that together, you start to shape a reality. So that's why when you are alone, you have to think that you are also three. Three in this position, vertical, which is what I think, what I feel, and what I do. That's the trinity of coherence. These three needs to be aligned. And the other one, which is horizontal, is what I receive, what I give, and what I intend in the center. So you create something here that is called the cross. So that's the real cross that we have been all talking about, that is equinoxes and solstices. The planet does constant manifestation because the planet is dancing in a specific circle, going through this cross all the time. So it is so balanced in this cross that it creates life constantly. But because we are disconnected from that cross outside, so therefore we are disconnected from it within, we are not able to create or manifest. So you have a circle, which is yourself, and the cross of manifestation, from the spirit to the ground and from yourself to the others. Vertical, horizontal, and that's what also you shape as the medicine wheel, okay, where you can actually create your own things. your own medicine. So you can start doing it with yourself, thinking if you are coherent with everything that you think, that you feel, and that you do. Once you have these three in coherence means a heritage that you share. That's the origin of the word. A heritage that you share, which means what I have received from my mind, I share it with my heart. What I have received from my heart, I share it with my body. So that's coherence. And once we have that, we have to understand if everything that I received, I am giving equally, and everything that I'm giving, I'm receiving equally. So I have a perfect intention. Intention means to be in constant tension. And constant tension for our world is like, it's terrible. But actually, a chord in a guitar doesn't sound if there's no tension. So the perfect tuning for something needs tension. So you have to have the strings very well tight in order for the sound to be perfect. So that intention is not, I would like for that to be. That's the mistake in the mind. We perceive that intention means to put the intention that something would happen. And every time that you believe that, the universe creates always something in the future. Because I would love for that to be this thing. So the universe says, okay, I will create would love to, would. So it creates a constant would that it never happened. Okay? So you have to, intention means when these two coherents are aligned to each other. And they are tied to each other. So they resound perfectly. That would mean. So here you have the law of three in vertical, the law of three in horizontal. On the three in vertical is what you think, what you feel, what you do. The law of three in horizontal is what you receive, what you give, and what you intend. What is your intention? So that would be the main thing. And so there you can understand that you can be the creator of your own reality by putting in action what you feel and what you think. But that is for your own creation. That is for your own thing. And in order to do that, you should never speak with your language in past sentence or future sentence. For the heart to be able to manifest needs always to be in present sentence. That's the power of time, of the cycles. When you talk in present sentence, the universe will always create present, not possibilities in the future or structures in the past.
There's another important aspect of that. When you're placing something in the future, I want this in the future, you're actually reifying, which is a fancy word to say making real. You're making real that in the present, it's not real, right? Like, I want this thing, Lamborghini. Well, you're just reinforcing the fact that you don't have one now, right? Like, I want this healing in the future. Well, you're just reinforcing that you're sick right now. Right? So there's a subtle subconscious way that when you place something in the future, you're actually making real the lack of what you're experiencing in the present, which is why the most powerful manifestation practices or visualization practices are to place yourself in a position where that thing, even if it is a future thing, it's real now. So when I was in the locker room with Jake Paul and I was guiding a visualization for him winning his fight against Nate Diaz, we anchored in that moment to a moment where he walked back in that locker room and we both screamed at each other the left hook because we had a vision and shared vision that he was going to knock Nate to the canvas with a left hook. So we were like, right now, imagine that feeling, feel that feeling right now. You walk through that door, you see my smiling face, and we both scream at each other the left hook, and then we hug each other. And we get to that moment, and I actually forgot that we did that, but then he walks back in the locker room and there's a photo of it that he posted on his Instagram of us screaming at each other, the left hook. And it happened exactly as it did, but it didn't happen imagine that you will in the future in this kind of neutral, non-emotional place. No, we made it real in that moment, and we were smiling and feeling that thing happen as if it was already done, as if it was happening there in that moment. And that's the real power that comes from this and this is all, if anybody's been to any of Joe Dispenza's workshops, that's it. You make that healing real. You're healed now. You feel the healing as a present tense experience, which then creates the present future reality that you're actually looking to build. So this is a subtle distinction, but it's incredibly important and actually one of the most essential things when you're trying to manifest anything. And another law of three that Matthias shared was that when you're thinking about this and you want to make this more powerful, think about at least 3 other people that this thing you desire will benefit. So one of the things I want to do, which, I don't believe in coincidences. So a brother came up and said he'd like to do a healing coherence for our brother, Dr. Nick, who's over there fighting his way through, lying down. And so when we're going to do this, I'm going to have Matthias architect this process so you can see it in action. And when we do this, one of the things to think about is not just, okay, this will benefit Dr. Nick, but then imagine then Dr. Nick feeling better and then being able to serve his medicine to the rest of the community, many other people that this will benefit. And then all the people who will watch this and watch this healing occur, and then all of the benefit that will create when that healing occurs, so that there's more than just the singular desire. So if you're trying to manifest some abundant reality, well, what is that abundant reality going to help? Is it just going to help you? Well, that's not nearly as powerful to the universe. If you say, this thing manifests, look at all of the beauty that's going to come from that. And the weaver, the mystery, great spirit, the network will say, that's a pretty good idea. Look at all the people that's going to help. And so that superpowers the activation. So it's another way that this rule of 3 can be utilized. And then the last one, just to also touch on, is another thing that Matthias taught, which is the ability to bring yourself into a higher vibrational state. So of course, sex magic and manifestation, you guys are probably familiar with that. You bring yourself in a high erotic charge and then manifest from the heightened state of that erotic charge. But also laughter is a way to bring yourself into a high vibrational state. Sexual energy is not the only energy that the body can cultivate. There's other energetic states which hold extra power that you can utilize. So these are some of the codes that can help all of us in our manifestation process.
Mm-hmm. Sex, laughter, and fever. The holy trinity of Kundalini activation. Fever. Yeah. Fever is very good also for the Kundalini activation. It cleans the whole body. So this pattern of 3 can be multiplied then from within, from your own solstice and equinox power towards others, and you create a holy trinity of this same thing with other 3 people. So you create being the positive or the negative or neutral in between other 2 people. But you can also multiply this for 6, creating something that we call the twin flame. And we tend to confuse the idea of the twin flame with a partner in life or a soul that is exactly my complement for life, but it's not. Sorry to kill the magic of trying to find your twin flame to fuck. But actually, it's yourself. Okay, it's more like a masturbation with the spirit than falling in love. But
Holy Ghost! Here we go.
So the twin flame is basically in yourself, is the relationship between this cross, which is horizontal and vertical, which is the 2 flames or the two fires, that one ignites in the center of your brain and the other one in your root chakra. So both are basically activating your whole center, which is the heart, in the middle between the heart and the plexus, which is the I am. So when you have this in yourself, when you have that recognized in yourself, and then you pull it out into other two people with you, you start to manifest this flame from the root chakra, the negative, and the crown chakra, the positive, and you create the plexus. So it's like a whole process of Kundalini. And when you have 6 people, you are amplifying that into the 2 actual flames. So you create a fire of manifestation, a fire of God, the eye of God, let's say. So at least the machine of it. And then if you put 2 people in the center, one in negative and the other one in positive, someone, for example, feminine or masculine, or someone sick and someone healthy. So it creates also a powerful balance in what is happening inside. So it creates the sun, the moon, the download of a pattern of information. And then if you multiply that by 4 in the center, which is the 4 mother cells, the creators of your body. So you have all the potential that your body needs to awaken something. And around, instead of 6, you have 12. 12 people around. It creates the entire path of your soul. So 12 people around, 6 in the center, 6 around, would empower the strings with every constellation. So all the stars that makes this manifestation true. And then you can keep going that into 36. And when you create 36, you are naming the positive aspects of the planet Earth. And then you multiply that into 72. And 72, you have all the names of God, which is all the powerful creation of the divine. And then you multiply it by 2 again in this duality, and you have 144. And with 144, you are able to speak with yourself in all the dimensions. So that's why, depending on where you want to go, as you multiply the pattern, you start to create a net that goes beyond yourself and your own manifestation, and you can amplify that in the manifestation through dimensions, not only in this reality. So you can actually start to bring the power of someone that is in other realms into this realm. And what happens is that who is in the center starts to become one of those 144, or all of them at the same time, which brings us to channeling.
So we are going to talk about channeling. And I think, though, before we get to that, well, actually, let's talk about that now, because I also want to let you be the maestro, the conductor of a ritual for our brother, Dr. Nick, and actually put this in form so you guys can see what that's going to happen. But let's briefly touch on channeling, because this is something that's becoming more and more available in our time. It's part of our own belief field, this belief field that believes that this is real and possible. And I've seen it just in my own ohana, in my own family, all of these activations coming on, people being able to speak in different languages, people getting guidance, and even the sensation of beings moving through them. And this is a beautiful process, but it's also a process that has some guidelines and some boundaries. And so, we just want to, take a moment to allow Matthias to be like channel dad and be like, hey, y'all, here's some basic guidelines for if you're going to activate and be, receive these energies, put yourself in that feminine place of receive the energies, be penetrated by another energy, like the moon, is penetrated by the sun and then shines its light. if you're going to allow yourself to be penetrated by these energies, what's the discretion? Just like anybody who's going to allow themselves to be penetrated should have discretion about who's penetrating them. Also, we have to have discretion about how and when and how to utilize these penetrative energies, because not everybody who wants to penetrate you is the person that should be penetrating you. As above, so below.
Yeah.
And we probably all, many of us have been penetrated or penetrated in a way where we're like, man, that probably wasn't the best idea. That's okay. And that's all right if that happens in channeling too. But so this is just, want to take a brief moment as this phenomenon is, becoming more and more present, to allow Matthias to give, a few guidelines to this, and then how to navigate these magical spaces.
The handbook of channeling.
Yeah.
Well, we are basically all channelers all the time, because we are positive and negative. And so our bodies are electrical. So that means that we are all the time channeling information that is around. And most of all, those who are empaths, how do you say that? Empaths, yeah. Who are open channels for that energy. And it takes us back to this portal of the cross. So, as I said, if it's not in perfect tension, which means if you don't have the right intention, the tension inside, if you don't have a coherence within, everything that you will channel will be according to that incoherence within. So it means that if your chords are not tight, you're not going to make music, you're going to make sounds or noise. And what happens today is that the planet itself is opening to be a channeler of other dimensions. We have done that for thousands of years during the ceremonies, when people left their personalities in order to become a way for other beings to show the wisdom. One of the reasons why we did that was because if we wanted to feel strong in our life, we needed to channel the power of the bear, for example. So people started to act like bears or dress like bears. So if we needed to find stability, we needed to be like a bear, like a bird, how do you say this? Garza in English. Stork. Yeah, thank you. So this interpretation of channeling was become like the animal you want to be like. So then they said, if I want to be a great hunter, I have to become like the tiger. So you act like the tiger when you are hunting. But then we went farther to that. If we want to give right fruits, we need to channel the tree. We need to become like the tree. If you want to become like God, you have to act like the sun, and so on. So we started to act like, in order to receive that information from the other realms. So channeling was basically taking a play, like acting. It was acting, basically, the first steps of that. So because of the acting, just living yourself in order to become something different, you start to also look through the eyes of that wisdom. You start to become that reality in the other level. And today we have more humans and more possibilities of many other realities to be interpreted, which means that more humans are started to channel. We are being open to every possibility. Before we had just a few possibilities. So people that were channeling in the past 2,000 years in our cultures, they usually channel demons or angels. Why? Because of Christianism. But other cultures, they were channeling other things or other beings. And And now, because we have an open culture of many different possibilities, we're channeling whatever. Which is, and sometimes what we channel is not actually a being, it's the information that is in the fifth dimension of that being. Like, for example, I used to start channeling Merlin. I was like, Merlin. And what is Merlin? Who is Merlin? It's actually someone that lived in England. And when I asked him that, he said, there are many Merlins. Many. And all of them are part of a whole being called Merlin that is all over the fifth dimension. So when you channel Merlin, it's not Merlin coming to you. It's the information of Merlin being downloaded within you. And that happens with any other information. And that can make a confusion to us, saying maybe I was Merlin, or maybe I was Cleopatra, these kind of things. But actually, we are accessing a library of information that you can, it's like downloading your book in an ebook. Okay, so in your computer. So you can have all the books that you want, all the information that you want in your own computer. And that's how it works in the fifth dimension and the third dimension. We are devices and we can download information from any master that have written that information in the fifth dimension. But what happens? Equally as in a book, every person can read the same book and interpret something different. The same sentence can mean totally different things according to what is the process of acknowledgement of that person. So Merlin can say something wise to someone or something terrible to someone according to what that someone is able to read or interpret. We call that intelligence. Intelligence means to intellegere, which is to read between lines in Latin. So it means that whatever is actually said is not the truth. The truth is behind our interpretation of what is said. So we awaken intelligence or wisdom when we don't follow letter by letter what someone is channeling, but actually taking what is behind the message itself. When we follow the message as it was channeled, we create religions. I don't know if you related to that. So you are basically following something that someone else said, and it's the interpretation of that person, but you do it exactly as it was said. So that's why religions doesn't make any sense. So intelligence is to read behind that, which means to start to understand that whatever we channel is not the truth. And that's very important to understand. What you channel is not the truth. It's just the interpretation of the truth through your own channel. And that's why we should relax every time that we channel. Like, don't get desperate on saying, I receive the message of this being and this is what he said and this is the truth. And sometimes we get very crazy about what we have received. And the word crazy because of what we received is not because of what we received, it's because we were crazy before. Okay? Just for you to have it in mind. If we get desperate emotionally for what we received, it's because we were desperate emotionally before. Okay? So if it's confusing message, it's because we were confused before. So the information will always be downloaded according to how you are in that moment. That's why the most important thing to do is coherence, is to find the way in which you become neutral in the center. The center should be neutral. So whatever comes is like, a war is coming. A war is coming, okay? You know, like, no, my gosh. Because we start to create a reality that is not real, okay? So you bring the information, you write the information, and maybe this information will make sense in 30 years because fifth dimension doesn't have time. So sometimes we channel things that are not for now, that are for 300 years in the future, or 600 years in the past. So we can get very confused because there's no time in the fifth dimension. So that's why it's better to write it down and start to figure out outside what is related to this channeling, but not get desperate like I received this, so it must be completely true because an Arturian told me. No? Who is an Arturian? By the way, it's like, it's an alien. They don't channel. So when we receive this information, it's not specifically that being talking exactly to you. It's you tuning to what someone is saying in another dimension or in another world.
So one of the things so Paul Selig, who's someone you guys might also be familiar with, who channels a group of beings that go by the name Melchizedek, that chosen that name to represent their aggregation. The guidelines that he's put out that are very simple, which I think are important as we're talking about discretion, he says, be mindful of any being or any energy or any information that you channel that creates a sense of inflation, that makes you feel that you're special. Right? So if it makes you feel that you're special, it's probably activating some aspect of your ego, right? Like some aspect of your ego is being touched upon, and that allows this resonance with that being that wants to inflate your ego. And so if that's happening, red flags should go up. And this can happen in very insidious and nefarious ways. I had an experience during the eclipse, and I was in the liminal space in between awake and asleep, and I had what felt like this channeling type of experience where there was this energy, this information that came in that said, you did something that that shifted us off the right timeline as a planet, and you fucked it up. And I was like, and then I started to kind of panic. And when I woke up, I was like, oh, no. Like, well, when was it? Was it during one of my deep journeys where I didn't remember what I did and I did something? But then as the eclipse came from fullness, I started to realize how nefarious this trap was, because the trap got in by convincing me that I was powerful enough to shift the whole world off of its timeline, right? So some part of me liked the inflation of that moment, of that guidance. Oh, I'm powerful enough to shift the world. But then the insidious nature of it was, and you broke it. So now you must feel all of the shame and all of the guilt and take upon yourself all of the guilt of everything bad that happens because you broke it. And at that point, call it the devil had me. But then once I realized that trick, I was like, oh, this is some bullshit. And I realized that that's how it got in. It got in through a door of the ego that I had left open. And the door of the ego, and I've seen this play out. I saw this play out in an ayahuasca ceremony. I've seen it play out multiple times. I broke the world, and then someone actually moved into an act of self-harm because of the guilt and shame. I broke the world. That's one of the nastiest spells of this information and this energy that can come in, because it gets in through the door of the ego, through the door of inflation. I am powerful enough to break the world, and you broke it, which is all the guilt and all the shame, which then degrades who you are. So being aware that that's one of the doors that these energies might try to use to control you is very important. So being mindful of inflation. Also, if you're working with psychics, be very mindful of the psychics that move you into periods and states of inflation. And many, many psychics do this, and which is why I don't particularly like getting readings from psychics, because I always see these signs. And the counter of that, be very, very suspicious of energy, information, or beings that bring you into a state of fear. Right? If they're using fear is another way that can control you. So if these energies or beings are bringing you into a state of fear or a state of inflation, that's Paul Selig's very simple guide for discretion. And also in many psychic readings, you'll see both of these things. You are this and this, but be very careful on these days. Watch out, do not wear the color green, and say some shit like that. And it's like, so you're seeing both of these different things come through, which makes me go like, all right, this is not the guidance for me. Paul Selig's guides have never said anything that made me feel inflated or said anything that made me feel afraid, nor has Matthias done that in any way also, right? Like when he's been channeling and I've received something from those beings, those are the signs that to me indicate like, all right, now we're in good territory. No inflation, no fear. And that's a very simple guideline that I think all of us should really pay close attention to, that can really help us navigate these magical spaces.
Find neutrality in all the positive and negative. As I said, the positive expands you and the negative contracts, and finding the middle point is the one that finds balance in all of this. And one of the reasons sometimes when we go on a channeling or a ceremony in which we might receive information of us being very important is because we are a fractalization of the very origin. So eventually, in a very, very, very hidden memory of everything, we might remember we broke the time because actually we are God. So it's not Aubrey or Matthias or some one of you that lived that, but your ego might feel that that was you because your ego is just a fractal or a reflection of the very origin that actually did everything. So when we connect with that information, we cannot put ourselves the weight of saying, oh, it was me, because it was not you. It was the whole system who is reflected in each one of us. And that's why our main task when we are going to be open to all these memories and fractalizations of ourselves is to stay neutral, knowing that we are just a little tiny fractal of the everything. And this reminds me of Komombo, in the temple of Komombo. There's a master of darkness that he usually says, humans, you think you're important. All the time you think you're important, you are shit. He said, you're just the, how does he say? You're the compost of the fifth dimension. So be the proper compost. He usually says that to lower down, and then he says, but shit makes flowers grow. So, like at the end, like find the balance between those two things. Like find the balance. You will make flourish the world, but first deal with your shit.
Thanks for tuning into this video. Make sure you hit subscribe. Follow me at Aubrey Marcus. Check out the Aubrey Marcus podcast, available everywhere, and leave a comment. Let me know if this video resonated or what else you would like to hear from me in the future. Thank you so much.